So, congratulations, Mythri, on scoring a 730. So, if I'm not wrong, Q50 and a V39, right?
Yeah, DJ. Yes.
Perfect. How close was the GMAT to the last Sigma X mock that you took in terms of score and the experience per se?
But I think in terms of time, it was a week, and the score was just 10 points away from what the actual GMAT was.
Got it. So, I mean, I just basically wanted to emphasize that we're trying to understand from students right now as to which mock really can tell how you're going to perform in the GMAT, right? So that's exactly why I asked you. Now, just take me through your GMAT journey, right? So, how did you decide you want to give the GMAT? What are your next steps? And how did you go about preparing for the GMAT?
Sure. So I had actually been thinking about the GMAT for about 3 years now, but because of a very hectic work schedule, I never actually got around to doing research or getting in touch with GMAT prep companies. But then the lockdown came, and all of us were working from home, and then I thought I would definitely have more time because travel was not a part of the schedule anymore. So, since I was anyway thinking about it for quite some time now, I thought I would join a GMAT Prep, which basically offers something online because obviously I was not. I mean, it was not safe to attend live classes at this point, and obviously it was not feasible for me given my work schedule. So then I did a bit of research. I came across GMAT, e-GMAT, and then I attended, I think, about 7 or 8 webinars, which are conducted by Rajat and Payal on both quant and verbal. And I found them extremely informative, and the entire approach to solving the problem using meaning based approach, or say pre-thinking, or the exact step-by-step method in case of quant actually appealed a lot to me. So that's when I signed up for e-GMAT after talking to Anshul and having the initial consultation call.
Got it. So the decision-making factor for you was basically one of those strategy sessions where Rajat really takes you through the different, ability versus accuracy, pre-thinking, meaning-based approach, and things like that. So, what do you think was the difference? Because a lot of prep companies do these free webinars, right? So,
Hmm. Hmm.
what's the key difference in these webinars versus those? I'm sure you attended those as well.
Yeah, yeah, and a couple from some other companies. So I think the main thing was Rajat, before every webinar, he actually emphasizes on the fact that GMAT is quite important and how getting a 730 or a 730 plus score actually matters in the long run. So usually all these prep companies, when it comes to webinar, directly start on how to use shortcuts and tricks to solve problems. So whereas the e-GMAT thing and how Rajat explains how GMAT is very important and how it plays a role when B School is looking at your application is something that actually stood out to me in case of e-GMAT, and that is when I signed up.
Got it. I think that makes a lot of sense because getting a 730 or a 730 plus score opens up so many avenues for you in terms of scholarships and things like that. So once you had a chat with Anshul, who is a strategy consultant with us, what were your next steps? What was the first thing you did, and how did you go about doing the course?
Yeah, so basically, a study plan is something that I started off. So I gave a mock before I actually signed up,
A
and then
diagnostic, so just to figure out what your abilities are.
yes, yes, yes. So
Exactly
I
as
was
Rajat
already
says that figure out what your abilities are before you really jump into.
correct, correct. So I scored a 610 in that mock, and then subsequently I had a call with Anshul, who actually said that I should start with the verbal first because my verbal score was weaker and I should actually spend ample time before I move on to the quant part because I was already at a Q48 when in the first mock that I took. So then I set up the study plan using the calendar tool in the e-GMAT. I started off with the master comprehension first. Then came the sentence correction module. And I would say SE is the thing which actually stood out in the whole course for me. I spent quite a bit of time on it, and I actually loved the way the whole thing is set up. You have pre-quizzes, you have post-quizzes, and then you have Scholaranium, which is the test readiness version. And then after SC and CR, you again ask us to do test readiness. And after RC, we do test readiness again. So the whole thing actually sets you up for the GMAT, right? Because you're not tense anymore because you've done so much work and you know which question type is your strength, which is your weakness. And then when these test readiness quizzes happen, you actually have a lot of data which actually helps you uh, see what is your weakness, and then you can actually do customized quizzes on your weaknesses. uh, Suppose there is an issue which I'm facing in terms of time in any question type, although I'm hitting the correct answer, but it's taking me 3 minutes to get there, so that data is readily available. So then I used to sit and read all the explanation to the answer choices and figure out why didn't I think of it, how much time did I take to think of it. So each answer choice explanation is brilliant. So it's so convincing when one reads all the answer choices that I would say really stood out for me in case of SC. So yeah, so first module was SC,
So essay is
and
definitely fantastic, right? I mean, I agree with it because I've gone through the course. But how important is it to do the master comprehension bit before you really jump into essay?
hmm, I think master comprehension teaches you actually how to read complex sentences, understand the meaning. So if I were to just read it within 10 seconds, I think I have understood, but I've not actually understood the crux of the sentence. So that is what happened to me in the first mock, where I ended up scoring a very low verbal percentile. And then the first thing that I did was a master comprehension course, and I could actually see a stark difference because you pause, you understand what a preposition is doing in the sentence, you understand why the punctuation is there, and how you can actually figure out the meaning based on all these things.
So
So
something
that,
seemingly as simple as just this, as you're talking about punctuations or pausing, is something that a lot of people don't really, they kind of ignore. They sidestep when they're
yeah,
really jumping into SC, CR, or RC, right? So that makes a lot of sense to me. So just want to touch upon a few things that you mentioned, right? So you mentioned a lot of things. You
hmm,
mentioned custom quizzes. You mentioned Scholaranium. You mentioned the timing piece, right? So we're going to go one by one on talking about all of these
sure.
things. So, take me through your experience of Scholaranium as a platform and how it helps you practice the right way.
Sure. So, first off, I think when someone starts off preparing for SC, and I am in a client based role, and I'm always told that my communication skills are very good. But when I ended up doing SC in the mock, it was actually a shocker for me that I was so bad at verbal. I think because GMAT has a specific set of constructions which are not generally very familiar to non-native speakers, I would say, like us, who've been born and brought up in India. So after the course, you're fairly comfortable with the kind of questions GMAT asks and the kind of constructions and the approach which you have to follow to break down the sentence. That was the crux of the SE course. And then came Scholaranium. So in terms of the cementing quizzes, so I would say first off, I'm not pressured about time because you're giving me half an hour for answering 10 questions. The one enemy for most students would be the time pressure. But I really like the approach where you're given 3 minutes instead of say the 1 minute and 15 seconds in the actual exam. You start off by giving me 3 minutes. Let me have a good think about the approach, how to solve it, how to break down the sentence, how to understand the meaning. And then you say, in half an hour, this is your score, and these are your weaker areas. If you want, you can do custom quizzes. And then again, when you move to the test readiness version, you're a little bit lower on the time. And because you've done Scholaranium, you've actually done strategic review of each of those quizzes. You actually improve on time.
All right. So just going to
Uh,
stop you here.
because
Just going to stop you
with the
here.
amount
So
of data which is available.
right. So now you've spoken about strategic review. Like a lot of us don't over here don't know what strategic review is because we don't do it, right? And
Hmm.
that's precisely why I want you to talk about this a little because the transition from doing a question, internalizing those concepts, to actually producing that output in test readiness. There's a massive gap here, right? There's a bridge that needs to be built. So How important is strategic review?
I think it's the single most important factor which actually makes sure that you see progress in your accuracy from the cementing quizzes to the test readiness quizzes. So
Got it.
once
How do you
you've
do it?
done the yeah. So in terms of strategic review, we have videos by Payal, which the team sends us once we are done with the cementing quizzes, right? So for SC, you actually identify where you faltered. So once you've read the solution, you there's a type A, type B, type C, and you actually fall into one of those buckets, and you make notes about each of these questions and where exactly did you falter? Suppose I misunderstood the meaning of the sentence, then that is the note I make based on the bucket which file asks us to do for each question. Suppose I eliminated a choice for the wrong reasons, then I make a note of it. And yeah, this has been incredibly helpful because while you're doing it, you actually understand why you went wrong and where you went wrong. And in the final days leading up to the exam, reading all these notes is invaluable.
Got it. And
So
do you do this for both correct and incorrect questions, or just the incorrect questions?
no, definitely even for the correct questions because sometimes maybe you got them wrong, got them correct for the wrong reasons. So, or even after getting them correct, you took more than 4 minutes, which was happening to me a lot. So, you actually do it for all the questions and a very thorough review. And like you guys ask us to maintain, we should also maintain an error log where you
Right.
basically note down all the errors that you've made for later reference.
This sounds like a very painful process, and I'm sure that a lot of us don't really do it. I just want you to talk about how it impacted your GMAT score. So you've already said it's invaluable, right?
Hmm.
If you were to define metrics for how an error log really helped you, can
Hmm.
you say that it helped me with XYZ things? What would those XYZ things be?
Yeah. So, as a person, I'm very forgetful. So, if I don't have reminders that I have to do this thing at this time, or if I have actually learned something, say 2, 3 months back, I will forget it because unless I refer to it later, it's not fresh in my mind. And I think for GMAT, one thing is you always have to stay in touch. So, this error log actually helped me quite a bit in case of SE because after SE and CR, I had some gap because of some personal reasons, and then I did quant. And then when I did Sigma X, before I did it, I went through this error log and it was extensive. I knew why I got an answer wrong and what I need to do to fix it. So this error log was very helpful. If I didn't have this, I would have probably had to do the whole course again. So for people like me, I think it's the single most important thing.
Got it. And then making sure that you revise the error log. I think that's something people don't, they just make it and then forget about it. Right? So I
No,
think
I
that's
think you have
something
to
you
stay
did.
in constant touch
Yeah,
because once you're out of touch, you're out of habit, then again you go back to being at square one.
got
So
it.
I
So
think,
let's talk about that bit you were mentioning about the data on Scholaranium. How does data and these constant feedback points help you as a student when you visualize things or work on those weak areas or your strengths even?
yeah, so data was very important because earlier on I was taking, say, 2.5, 3 minutes in the cementing quizzes for some question types like verbs or say pronouns, whereas the other ones I was able to get within a 1 minute or 1 minute 20 seconds. So then I did custom quizzes for verbs and pronouns, and that actually helped improve my takt time. And in terms of errors also, because you guys have basically how do I put this? Uh, Even in types of questions, you're giving us accuracy percentages, right? So I know that I'm quite good. Suppose we're talking about CR. I know I'm quite good at boldface. So I strategize to basically complete a boldface question in say 1 minute, and I was bad at assumption, so I was giving it 1.5 minutes,
So I'm going to
so
going
that
to share my
there's
screen
a
also, so that I think you can explain it better then. So this is an account here. I'm going to go to Scholaranium. I think let's show people what you're talking about, right? So
yeah.
we go to skill data here, and in skill data you have your different accuracies with the average time for correct and incorrect as well. I think you are talking about this component. So in subject verb, with the kind of question,
Hmm.
what is the amount of time I'm taking? So I get to know if I'm weak at something, and I can decide if just to see weak areas, or I can genuinely say, I think this is what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So for me, I think verbs and pronouns were the main issue. So I did custom quizzes and strategized to improve on time there.
got it.
So that's what I was talking
Perfect. So I mean, this is the amount of data that Scholaranium does gather, and something that a lot of students actually don't even use, even though they do have Scholaranium. So this is exactly why what we're doing is really helpful. So moving on to test readiness. We spoke a lot about test readiness and how it really helped you perform on mocks, right? What were the key things that you did in test readiness, and what are the best practices?
Yeah, so again, it's one difference between the cementing quizzes and the test readiness is you're actually challenged to reduce the amount of time because you were expected to have done a strategic review of the cementing quizzes, and the amount of time available is actually nearer to the near a real GMAT scenario, right? So the first test readiness quiz I took, I think I did good on time. So I became overconfident. To be very honest, I didn't do the strategic review because I thought I killed it. And then Payal generally says to be sure that you have to have consistency. I did a second test readiness quiz. And that's when I faltered because I didn't strategize for time. I became overconfident. But then I had the entire data available. So I went through the data. I actually figured out what question types were bothering me, and then I realized how important strategic review is. And I went back and did it for quiz one, and then did it for quiz two as well. So I would say I clearly know the difference when I've reviewed a quiz and when I don't review a quiz. So
Uh,
that's very
so
important.
review is again key even when you're doing test readiness, not just when you're in, stage two. Perfect.
Exactly.
You've taken multiple mocks. Now this is where I came in and we started working together, right? I mean, take me through the kind of feedback that you got after your mock and when we had that call.
Yeah, sure. So I think my test readiness in both verbal and quant was good. And then I thought I should take a mock. And then I took a mock and I ended up with a 670, which was extremely disappointing. And that's when I wrote to the support team. And then you came in and you actually identified the weak areas. And one important thing I didn't notice, even though I had all the analytics in the world available, was that I was not letting go of questions. So I think that's something which was uh, a game changer because I think I've always been good at quant. I never used to let go of questions. In fact, in that mock, I spent around 6 minutes on two questions. One was a geometry question and one was an interest question. So that's when you told me if you're unable to crack it in 3 minutes, you have to let go of the question. So I think that was the single most game changer for me because in that mock, I couldn't even complete the entire quant section. And after that, I've given so many mocks and I've written GMAT Prep and I've done the actual GMAT also. I've never run out of time on the quant section. So I think that was very valuable feedback. And in terms of the section wise abilities, also, you pointed out that algebra geometry was one where I was struggling quite a bit. So then you had asked me to do custom quizzes. You started off with asking me to do custom quizzes for both medium and hard level questions. And then slowly, after I worked on them, you asked me to do only hard level questions. So I
Right.
think that was really a game changer. I ended up with a Q50. I don't think if your support was there, I would have actually gotten a Q50 because my algebra geo was quite weak. So targeted practice, identifying what the issues in your mocks are, that feedback really helped because I was overlooking those aspects even when all those analytics were available.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think that's where the support team and we kind of as mentors come into the fray because objective feedback is not something. I mean, you have the data, right? But accepting the data is a different issue. If I'm just looking at it from an unbiased point of view, I can point out and say that. But if you're looking at your own account, you'll be like, no, I think I do them in a fair amount of time, and I don't really agree with this. So I think that's really important, getting that constant feedback on data from someone else who is a third party or a proper GMAT strategy expert. So fair enough. I think we worked for a while. I think we worked for about 1.5 months together, and I gave you feedback on your mocks. But I also gave you feedback on your mocks in different ways, right? So one way of feedback was when we got on a call, we figured out what we have to do. But another way, I think, towards the end, because again, I mean, there are certain time constraints that both of us had. I couldn't really take that call, and I created that video for you. Like, how important are these videos, and how I remember that video link had expired as well, and I managed to get it
Yeah.
back. And I realized then that these videos must really be helpful, right? I mean, if someone's asking for them, then they must
Yeah,
be really good.
it was really helpful because a couple of times what happens is when you're on a call, maybe you're thinking about something else and you can't fully concentrate. And even if you did at that point in time, uh, I have this problem of forgetfulness. Maybe I just missed a point, and even if I made notes, probably didn't jot down all the points. So if I keep watching the video 2 3 times, then I've actually digested whatever you've told me. Like all the points have gone into my system, and I was actually able to play out those strategies in my next mock. So I think the videos were definitely helpful.
Perfect. So now that you've
And
scored,
I would
yeah,
also like to mention, I would also like to mention that the videos were very timely. You didn't review my mock after 3 or 4 days because then precious time is lost, right? So you actually
yeah,
took the effort to revert in time and use the feedback that you've given me so that I could use the techniques in the next mock.
yeah.
So
I mean, that
I think
makes
that
sense,
was
no, right?
really
If I give you feedback at the wrong time, even if it's the right feedback at the wrong time, it's absolutely
yeah,
pointless. So I think,
yeah.
yeah, that's a tick for me. But yeah, I mean, I'm very happy that you scored a 730. Now that you have scored a 730, what are your plans for the future? What schools are you planning to apply to?
Yeah, so I am looking at North America and Canada as of now. So I'm still shortlisting schools, but since I'm into Fin and I've been a financial analyst for about 7 years now, I am looking at applying to Booth, Columbia, uh, Cornell, and Kellogg in North America, and Rotman in Canada. So
Yeah,
these are my
so
target schools,
Rockman is
and
a great idea for Canada because they have a very finance-oriented batch. Like a lot of, I think, 48% of that cohort last year went into finance. The rest went
yeah,
into consulting and so on, sales and so forth. In fact,
yeah,
one of my seniors from one of my last jobs is in Rotman, right? I mean, she just
oh,
graduated and she's been able to pay off her loan in like a year, which is great. I mean, it's a very big loan, right? So it's fantastic.
true.
And it's a really good school. I mean, especially for Canada. You may also consider Ivy, which is up and coming, and they have a really small cohort. But again, that's something that you may want to look into. Maybe specifically not for finance because they're more consulting oriented. But if
Yeah.
you're into that kind of thing, then Ivy is also a good school to look at. Yeah, having said that, I think these are really good schools that you should be applying to. Cornell has very different programs, very finance-oriented programs or product dev related, product tech related programs. They have this
Tech
one-year
related.
program where they just focus on that,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, I think these are really good schools, and I can only wish you all the luck for it. So yeah, just wanted to congratulate you once again and wish you all the best for your future.
Thank you so much, DJ. I should thank you for all the support you've given me before. I think 1.5 months, like you said, we worked together, and I think that's really paid off. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much.